Hi, I'm Amy Dagerstrom, the Executive Director at the Becker County Museum, and welcome to Museum Roadshow. Today we talked to Gary Thompson, who owns Tri-State Diving here in Detroit Lakes. He was a guest for our Brown Bag Lunch series, and he talks to us a little bit about all the interesting things he's found under the water in Becker County, including a lot of ice harvesting equipment. So I hope you enjoy.
I've been diving for a number of years, 45 years. I might as well get it out there. Most of the students that I teach now haven't been as old as what number of years I've been diving. When I started diving back in the 60s, I always tell my students there were three types of people I got into diving. Okay, military, Olympic swimmers, and stupid people. Okay, I didn't fall into the first two categories because basically we dove by the seat of our pants. When I first started, there wasn't any place to get certified. And nowadays we tell people you want to go fly an airplane without being certified. You don't go diving without being certified. Fortunately, because I started that many years ago, there is a lot of stuff that was on the bottom of the lakes. There wasn't many divers and out there looking for stuff, for artifacts and stuff. Right now I'm in the process of writing a book of my experiences diving. I think I'm up to 1982, so I got a ways to go yet. So I don't know which chapter I'm on. And in there I'm talking about the different stuff that I found over the years and how diving has evolved over those years. To start out with, one of the first items I ever found while diving was a PV hook. That's a PV hook, right? Yeah. This one's a cant hook. They got them labeled wrong over there, so so you got to get them changed around. I found a PV hook in Big Elbow Lake. And it was off the sunken island on the south end, and I was intrigued. I said, wow. So I went up and met with Otto Johnson, who lived on the north end of the lake, and he deadheaded a lot of lumber in that lake, and he soldered up, and a lot of the cabins are built out of that lumber. Otto passed away years ago, and I wish I would have, when I interviewed him in those days, I would have had a way to videotape it because that guy was full of knowledge on the logging that was done up there. So, in the process, he told us a story that right out in front of where he lived, he tried to raise a log up. He thought it was in a log, but the back end of his raft or pontoon was pretty crude. It was beer kegs that were the floats on it, and then he had a winch on it, so he hooked onto a log, he raised it up, hook it on, and he would go back to his place where he had the sawmill and load them, and then he would stand them on the logs on end for a while till they dried, and then he would saw them. Well, he couldn't get it lifted off the bottom, so he knew it had to be something big. Well, it turned out they had a railroad trestle that came down there, and they would dump the logs off the side, and it was quite high off the water, but it would get eventually so many logs there they couldn't roll any more off. And so what they did is they had another little spur that came out, and they had a railroad car would back on top of a sled with skis that had rail on top of it, and that would go out on the lake, and they would dump them off. Well, the team of horses, the sled, and I don't think the logs went down because they didn't find any logs around it. The sled and the railroad car went to the bottom. I did find bones from the horses that were down there. The people got out. Whoever was on it got out alive. But they would go out on the lake and then dump the logs off and come back and get another load. Well, in the process, because of this, in the spring of the year, you could not see water on that lake. It was solid logs. And those logs would end up going down the Otter Tail all the way down to Frazee, which at that time was the largest sawmill. Okay, they cut on the average 250,000 board feet a day. And they were using band saws instead of circular saws, so there wasn't much waste. And so from that whole area up there, the staging area was Big Elbow Lake to run them all down. So that's interesting history on that part. Well, in the early days, when they first started out, they got, from the company they worked for, they got a logging hook. There was no charge to get another one if it went over. So when they're up on these cars, they didn't want to go down on that ice that far down, so if they got hooked, they would just let them go. And there was sometimes enough open water, they'd break through and go down. I have found in the I suppose over the years, about 30 of these and probably 20 of these off the end of the trestle. And the trestle, there's all bark. When they're rolling them off, the bark would come off. So the bark is dissolving slowly, and then you can find more of these sticking out. We use metal detectors to find most of them. And most of them are probably pretty in shape like this. And they've actually, when we bring them out, we try to dry them slow, but they'll actually develop a bow on them. That generally tells me they're underwater. If they were used a lot, so the stuff they had them protected, the salts would get in and actually wear it down, and you would get ending up like this. But that's not why this one got like this. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. So the logging history up there is very unique. When they did the documentary on it, I talked to the museum at that point, and we were willing to donate our time and our crew to recover that flat car and sled and bring it up to put it back here at the museum. But it couldn't sit outside. It would have to be inside for so many years for it to be taken out so nothing would happen to it. There was 2 sets of wheels at the end of the trestle that went off the end, and those ended up at Bear Trap Resort on Juggler. The guy that owned the resort there owns Magnelia Steel, and they went out there one winter, raised them up, and then he took them back, and then they had those set up again with actually logs on it. So if anybody's been up there, I don't know if they still got them there or not after he sold the resort, but that was up there. So our goal is, before I quit diving, is I would like to get that up and have a museum get it someplace. We would have to get somebody to donate their time once we got it to shore to load it on and get it back here, but I would love to see that. That's the only place that I know of that they use both. Most of the time they would sled them out on the ice and drop it. They wouldn't have a railroad car. They would have the big sleds they would haul them on. But it's the only place I know of where they use the combination of the sled and the flat car. So it's really unique to that area. Big Elbow has a lot of logs on the bottom yet. It's full of logs. It's because they would sink because they got down or whatever. There's a lot of good timber on there.
Thanks for joining us on Museum Roadshow today. We'll be back with more from Gary Thompson next week.